PEDs are awesome. Or are they? Whenever I post a strength and conditioning breakdown, the comment sections are flooded with PED accusations. Many fans seem to assume that every successful fighter is enhanced. Even Diaz famously said,
"Everybody's on steroids."
Yes, fighters are being drug tested, but are there holes in the testing procedures? Probably. If you've watched the Netflix documentary Icarus, you know about the constant race between the latest designer drugs and drug testing authorities. While it's hard to prove who's on PEDs and who's not, we actually have a very clear idea what they do, both good and bad. Let's explore the performance-enhancing effects and health risks of three of the most common PEDs: EPO, anabolic steroids, and growth hormone. Erythropoietin, short EPO, is the main hormone regulating the production of red blood cells. Red blood cells contain a protein called hemoglobin, which carries oxygen and carbon dioxide in the blood. EPO supports oxygen delivery and CO2 removal for energy production and acidity management in the muscles. Its production in the kidneys is mainly regulated by hypoxia, the lack of oxygen. This is why red blood cell count can increase with altitude training, especially in athletes with favorable genetics. In a clinical setting, EPO is used in patients with anemia, for example from kidney failure or chemotherapy. Lab-made EPO and similar compounds like EPO mimetic peptides and HIF stabilizers have also been used as performance-enhancing drugs for decades. Blood doping can also involve the transfusion of additional red blood cells. EPO was first banned by the International Olympic Committee in 1990. More than a decade later, researchers finally developed a direct test that could differentiate between lab-made and natural EPO. Indirect tests were established to measure related blood markers. To detect blood doping, the so-called athlete biological passport was implemented in 2008. Since then, athletes have tried to evade detection by microdosing EPO. Famously, Lance Armstrong was busted and banned from competitive cycling for EPO abuse and blood doping. The Lance Armstrong lie is another Netflix documentary worth watching. TJ Dillashaw was banned from the UFC for 2 years in 2019 for the use of EPO. There are currently 3 generations of EPO drugs. Typically, what's good for clinical patients is bad for athletes who want to cheat the system, and vice versa. The latest generations are distinct from endogenous EPO. They have a long half-life, so they need to be injected less frequently. While this is good for patients, it also makes it easier to detect in athletes. First generation drugs have a similar pattern as endogenous EPO. They have a shorter half-life, so they have to be administered more often. This means that they can be harder to detect in enhanced athletes. According to the US Anti-Doping Agency, EPO has been shown to increase VO2 max and time to exhaustion. 2 placebo-controlled studies in cyclists found the following. Over the course of 4 to 6 weeks, small doses of EPO improved VO2 max by about 7% and hemoglobin count by over 10%. A meta-analysis from 2020 looked at the data from 10 placebo-controlled studies. It showed improved cardiovascular fitness, power output, and time to exhaustion, especially at maximal training intensities. This means that EPO could be particularly beneficial in combat sports, which are typically performed at maximal or supramaximal intensities. But what about the risks of EPO, apart from being banned from competition like Dillashaw? Injecting EPO or similar PEDs rapidly increases the number of red blood cells. This thickens the blood and raises the risk of blood clots. Pro athletes typically use small doses under medical supervision, but amateur athletes might take larger, unsupervised doses. This means that the risk of severe side effects may be even higher. Athletes with naturally high levels of EPO are also at a higher risk of serious side effects. With long-term use of EPO or similar compounds, EPO production in the body can be inhibited irreversibly. The use of EPO can even lead to heart failure. In iron-deficient athletes, side effects can include high blood pressure, thrombosis, seizures, and cardiac arrest. EPO also stimulates angiogenesis, the creation of new blood vessels. This could potentially fuel tumor growth. Some of the PEDs sold on the black market haven't even completed clinical trials yet. They come from uncontrolled labs and could be contaminated with dangerous compounds like bacterial endotoxins. The injection of endotoxins can lead to anaphylactic shock and death. The dangerous side effects of EPO drugs can be amplified if they are combined with other PEDs like anabolic steroids. Anabolic androgenic steroids, more commonly known as anabolic steroids, include naturally produced testosterone as well as synthetic compounds. In a clinical setting, they are used to treat patients with conditions like chronic kidney disease, osteoporosis, or inoperable breast cancer. Nowadays, they are also commonly used in the general population. About 1 to 3% of the US population are estimated to use anabolic steroids, typically for aesthetics or sports performance. In the younger population, estimates are even higher. Steroids activate genes that boost protein synthesis. They increase muscle strength, fat-free mass, and exercise capacity. High testosterone levels also inhibit protein breakdown. This prevents muscle loss in a catabolic state. Energy production shifts from glucose to fat. Steroids also speed up exercise recovery. Steroid users like to emphasize how they still have to train hard and eat well for their gains. But is that actually true? A randomized, blinded, placebo-controlled study compared 4 groups of men for 10 weeks. Placebo without exercise, testosterone without exercise, placebo plus exercise, and testosterone plus exercise. The 2 exercise groups performed standardized training sessions 3 times per week. So what did the researchers find? The men who were enhanced but didn't train showed greater muscle growth and fat-free mass than the exercising placebo group. The steroid users who also exercised gained over 3 times more muscle than the exercising placebo group. They added over 6 kilos of muscle in 10 weeks, more than half a kilo of muscle per week. But USADA and Co are testing athletes regularly. Wouldn't they lose all their gains once they hop off the gear? A 2024 study showed that athletes who have used steroids in the past can retain their enhanced retraining capacity for many years. They have higher myonuclear density, often referred to as muscle memory. The muscle cells also have a higher DNA to cytoplasm ratio, enhancing protein synthesis. Without a doubt, steroid users have an unfair advantage over clean athletes. They can gain more muscle with less to no training, recover faster, and prevent muscle loss in a calorie deficit. However, this list of benefits comes with an even longer list of serious and potentially fatal health risks. Here are some of the most severe side effects. Exogenous anabolic steroids impair testosterone production in the body through a negative feedback loop. Even after steroid use is halted, this effect can last for many months. Steroids increase the risk of muscle and tendon strains and ruptures, as well as tendinitis. An 11-year observational study in more than 1,000 young men showed that steroid users were about 3 times more likely to die than non-users. Studies have shown that high doses of steroids cause oxidative stress, inflammation, toxicity, and cell death. This can contribute to multi-organ damage. The cardiovascular system is one of the most affected by steroid use. Anabolic steroids increase the risk of cardiac dysfunction, life-threatening arrhythmias, and sudden cardiac death. Steroids can cause the walls of the left ventricle to thicken, also known as left ventricular hypertrophy. This narrows and stiffens the ventricle, reducing the heart's ability to pump blood. Steroids can also reduce HDL, the good cholesterol, and increase LDL, the bad cholesterol, as well as blood pressure, 3 major risk factors in heart disease. Anabolic steroids can also impair the function of the endothelial cells and cause plaque buildup along the blood vessels. Both can be contributing factors in cardiac events. Autopsies have shown that cardiovascular disease is widespread in steroid-related deaths. However, sudden cardiac death can occur even without more measurable risk factors like high blood pressure or left ventricular hypertrophy. One series of autopsies in enhanced athletes who had died from sudden cardiac arrest showed no signs of uneven heart wall thickening, major artery blockages, blood clots, or heart inflammation. Instead, the heart only showed microscopic damage like enlarged heart muscle cells, cell death, disease in small blood vessels, and scar tissue. Excessive levels of anabolic steroids can also impair neurotransmitters and damage nerves and the brain. This can lead to mood swings, aggression, anxiety, depression, and even the loss of cognitive function and intelligence. Steroids can also damage the kidneys and cause inflammation, toxicity, and cancer in the liver. Enhanced athletes often combine drugs like EPO and anabolic steroids with synthetic growth hormone. Its performance-enhancing effects have been hard to prove, but its mechanisms are well understood. Human growth hormone is naturally produced in the pituitary gland. Growth hormone secretion primarily happens during deep sleep. Smaller pulses occur at intervals throughout the day. For example, HGH levels can temporarily increase 5 to 10-fold during exercise. Growth hormone promotes fat breakdown and protein synthesis. This results in reduced body fat and increased muscle mass. It also boosts bone growth. Some studies have shown a positive influence on fracture healing. Synthetic growth hormone was first developed through genetic engineering in the 1980s. It has since been used in patients with HGH deficiency, allowing their bones to grow to full stature. High doses of HGH are also used in burn victims. And now it gets really interesting. There's actually some data suggesting a potential link between concussion and reduced growth hormone levels. Significantly lower levels of HGH were reported in retired and active boxers. The same research group also reported similar results in kickboxers. The misuse of growth hormone in sports is due to its anabolic properties, but also its beneficial effects on carbohydrate and fat metabolism, as well as exercise and injury recovery. There are few controlled studies in elite athletes. Most of them show less impressive effects than common public claims, for example from the bodybuilding community. However, while the dosages in the studies were above normal levels, they weren't as large as what's commonly claimed to be beneficial in bodybuilding. The effects of HGH are complex, and it might be more effective in combination with other PEDs like anabolic steroids or EPO. For example, a placebo-controlled study from 2010 showed that growth hormone supplementation improved body composition and sprint capacity, especially when combined with testosterone. The most reliable testing method for growth hormone doping compares the ratio of synthetic HGH to naturally produced HGH, but the detection window is short. Growth hormone has a very short half-life of only 20 minutes in the blood, and urine concentrations are low. HGH is secreted in intervals, which causes significant fluctuations in the blood. Levels can also differ greatly between athletes. The release of HGH is impacted by factors like sleep, exercise, temperature, body composition, stress, and nutrition. This makes it challenging to detect in enhanced athletes. Sounds like a promising drug for cheaters. But what about the side effects? Chronic use of synthetic growth hormone can cause fluid buildup and edema, leading to joint pain and carpal tunnel syndrome. The fluid can also increase the pressure in the brain, resulting in vision changes and headaches. Excessive sweating is another common side effect. Excess growth hormone can cause swelling in the hands and feet, as well as abnormal bone growth in the face. Well, you tell me if any fighter comes to mind here. Growth hormone can also induce sleep apnea due to hypertrophy of the soft tissue in the airways. It can also lead to insulin resistance, diabetes, poor blood lipids, heart disease, and cancer. So back to the original question, are PEDs awesome? When it comes to fight performance, the answer is a clear yes, according to the science. But what about the immediate and long-term health risks? And what about the moral and ethical implications? First of all, if you're on PEDs, you give yourself an unfair advantage. You're cheating. Plus, if enough athletes hop on gear, the rest of the roster will be forced to follow suit and risk their health to stay competitive. There's also a risk of addiction. A fighter who performs well on PEDs will be tempted to repeat the doping regime or even ramp up the dosage. This may increase the risk of serious side effects even more. Now, you might feel like the health risks are worth taking if you're a successful fighter who makes a fortune with their craft. But this will quickly trickle down into the amateur circuits. What about all the fighters that will never make it to the big leagues? They will still deal with the lifelong consequences of PED abuse, but they won't be able to afford regular medical checkups and close health monitoring. It's a lose-lose for them. And lastly, PED use in combat sports sets a dangerous precedent for young athletes. The youth will either develop unrealistic expectations when it comes to strength, body composition, performance, and recovery, or they will assume that PEDs are an essential part of the recipe for success. Why wouldn't they take them rather sooner than later? It can't be so bad if all of their idols are on them. We can already see these trends play out in the context of social media, bodybuilding, and steroid abuse. Personally, I hope that drug testing becomes more sophisticated so that PEDs can be eliminated from fighting. There's no place for cheaters in combat sports. When two men or women put their bodies on the line, the fight should be fair. So do I think that most champions today are on gear? You can call me naive, but I don't. In order to reach the highest level of combat sports, fighters often go through decades of incredibly hard training. Their bodies are tested and conditioned from young age. It's basically natural selection. Only the toughest and most genetically gifted survive to make it to the top. But what are your thoughts on PEDs in combat sports? Do you share Nate Diaz's sentiment? Or do you think that clean fighters can still succeed at the highest level? Let me know in the comments below. And speaking of genetics, watch this video here next to learn how your genes predict your fight success. Like, comment, and subscribe for more. As always, train hard, recover smart, and fight easy.